What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about rooftop units. And I'm going to walk around and do a better job. So, can everybody hear me now? Is it working at all? That better? All right, good. I got involved in demand response 30 years ago for the utility when they were trying to save some peak demand, and it wasn't called that back then, but it's been of interest of mine for over 30 years, and the reason I like it is because it brings in time. And if you know when you can shut things on and off, we've heard about that all day, especially this afternoon. But also there's different times and different amount of revenue and money sources from doing different things, from reducing both your demand through demand reduction processes and also through demand response. So again, it's taking the time value of energy, wherever you are in the United States, and looking at it and manipulating whatever state you're in, whatever utility programs are there, because they're all different. And you'll end up doing different things in different utilities as a goal to reduce your energy costs. So really demand response, I know we were talking a little bit, a gentleman had a question a little bit earlier about, am I saving kilowatt hours or am I saving kilowatts, right? In this particular realm, we want to save money, right? Okay, so I'm going to bring that to the top for a second. So we can save money through demand reduction and get paid energy efficiency rebates from the utility. We can get demand reduction incentives from the utilities. We can do a whole bunch of things. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But there's a lot of money out there by paying attention to when you consume energy. So in this presentation, picked on rooftop units. We're going to talk about those for most of the presentation and how they play in the game of both energy efficiency and demand response, and both at the same time in some instances. Touch base a little bit on the system integrators and demand response providers, which a few of them we've had here this afternoon already making presentations. And then the importance of time in the last slide. Okay? Because a lot of people are on the understanding that, oh, demand response shuts something off for a while, it's good for everybody. Well, yeah, that's kind of a quick explanation of what it is. But if you're savvy enough to pay attention to all the funding opportunities out in front of you in all the different states, ISOs across the country, you can turn around and take that $1,200 we saw at that hotel a little bit earlier and turn it into $6,000 if you know all the people and all the players and all the programs that are sitting in front of you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Why look at rooftop units? Well, demand response is big savings in industrial facilities that shut stuff off. I had clients that would shut their entire building down for 2 hours, and they'd get paid great demand response money from the utility, and that one afternoon they made more money than operating profits for 3 months of manufacturing. 3 months of profit equaled one afternoon by shutting it down. That's a great thing, right? Now, you can't do that in Tennessee, but in Manhattan, you probably could. So they're under one incentive, right? They're thinking one way. So you're a homeowner or you're a small supermarket or you're a Dunkin' Donuts, you're not going to save that much by doing it, but there are other things you can do to take advantage on your level. So there's a multitude of things. However, if you look at walking down the street, a lot of them are office buildings, retail schools, and you can have rooftop units hanging on top. And so I picked that subject as there's a lot of them out there, right? Often many units per buildings. A lot of buildings, that's the largest energy consuming device sometimes. Historically, they malfunction. And the next line, which I agree 100% on, nobody likes to go to the roof. Now I throw that in there because nobody does. A lot of people don't even know what rooftop units are. They just know there's a gray box making noise and shaking above their heads. So all this and all these customers available throughout the utility service territory, it's a great opportunity for both saving energy and participating in both demand reduction programs and demand response programs that can be different and the same, okay, depending upon where we are around the country. So the first thing is, why are we looking at rooftop units? Well, as it says, they use a lot of energy, but they weren't really looked at for many years as an opportunity for energy efficiency reductions and demand response reductions. Okay? They're up there, they had a fan, a coil, a refrigeration, vapor compression system. They're off and running, and everybody paid attention on putting new energy conservation BMS systems in their building, making the chillers more efficient, the boiler systems. the old rooftop unit up there, they did their best to get their energy efficiency ratios up a little bit more, but nobody really dug down deep and started to look at the retrofit possibilities of current rooftop units in the United States or anywhere else for that matter, because there are millions and millions of them out there on right now that really didn't play in the demand response, really didn't play in the energy efficiency role when it came to retrofitting. So the Pacific Northwest National Laboratories did a study on what can we do to optimize the efficiency of a rooftop unit that's existing. I'm going to go inside the guts a little bit and fool around and optimize it. Because this on-off stuff, it's hot, it's cold. You know, that's like 400-year-old technology. It's 2017. We got to do a better job on our rooftop units. So if you go back a couple of years, they did a study, on optimized controllers. Now I threw a couple of names up here. There's many more. Transformative Wave, Best Tech, NextRev. These are companies that manufacture devices that get installed in your rooftop units. And what they do is make it a little bit more efficient. How is that accomplished? Well, I'm going to pick one of these men again. I'm not mentioning as many manufacturers as you want. I just took a couple of the major ones on here. What's this retrofit and why should we be interested in it as a utility, as an ESCO, as a customer? Well, because we've got a lot of them out there. So I used the transformative wave, and I'm just showing you a little bit of a graph on here for the presentation. And that's your rooftop unit. And what does this do? Well, it's like an added controller or an enhanced controller, as in the word that says enhanced controller. So we do a few things different. We look at the outdoor air temperature. We look at the supply temperature, which is the appropriate things to normally look at. But we can also look at the CO2, which is down in the space, and the CO2, which is outside. And we also can monitor the supply fan and throw a variable speed drive on there and start to play some fun games with it by slowing the fan down. And if the customer has a little old thermostat on the wall, we can go in there and, or the people who do this can go in there and put a EMS type Wi-Fi thermostat like we've heard about a little bit earlier. So there's not a lot, or some folks can even put a VFD on the compressors here, depending upon what type model you do. But we're going to take this rooftop unit and we're going to change the way it operates. We're going to be measuring inside, outside temperatures. And as someone asked a question a little bit earlier this afternoon, you know, what about you shutting the outdoor air dampers? I'll shut the outdoor air dampers, slam them shut, let no air in. And someone says, isn't that against code? No, not when I'm within the 700 parts per million if I want to do that. So now we're measuring so we can actually control the outdoor air damper. And I won't necessarily say slam it closed, but shut it and reduce the amount of outdoor air that's coming in. Slow the fan down when it's appropriate. Make sure the economizer actually works. It's one of the biggest things that breaks on all our rooftop units. It's okay. It breaks, it doesn't move. That's great, but if it's 5 below zero outside and the damper's wide open, you're going to be wasting a little bit of energy. So here we have these systems that are available to put on most rooftop units across the United States as we sit here today. Utilities will rebate this for energy efficiency. Now, I'm going to go on. If we have this on our rooftop and it's doing its thing, its VFDs are doing, everybody's happy, it's reducing the usage by 40 to 50% overall energy input in a year. This is what some of these controllers are doing. That's an enormous amount of energy you're saving. By just pay attention and carrying the rooftop unit and make sure that it's operating to its efficiency. That's a lot of money you can save. And again, a lot of companies are doing this now. So it's sitting on the roof. Somebody paid for half of it. The utility paid the incentive. Now someone comes knocking on the door and says, hey, we have this demand response program. Okay. Geez, maybe I can use this new optimized system I have. And here's an example on the board here of some of the things that we could do in addition to all the energy efficiency saving measures that we got a rebate for and we're saving kilowatt hours. Well, we can start to do a little bit of the things you always see that big high-rise buildings do. We coordinate the RTU energy consuming components are available, and we can change zones. We can pre-cool the building. We've talked about that a little before in demand response stuff. Can change the set points, but this is all inside to the rooftop unit. Okay? duty cycle, things like that. So this is inside to one rooftop unit. So as we heard earlier in the first presentation, they're going to control all these, I shouldn't say control, cycle on and off different rooftop units of 100 rooftop units or 1,000 rooftop units. Here we're just talking about one rooftop unit as this presentation. What are the different things we do for one rooftop unit? And then once you get that all down, then you hit it with that swarm type stuff that we heard earlier today from Encycle, and your money gets even greater, your savings get even greater. And this just shows, we've seen a couple of charts like this today. This was done out on, I think this was Pearl Harbor, where they ran the rooftop units and they started doing demand response signals and all that stuff. And the rooftop unit went to a different sequence of operation. And above and beyond its normal energy efficiency savings, it was able to do demand response. So this is a little bit of what the chart looks like coming out. And then a little bit before, after. You've all seen these graphs before. The benefit of temporarily shifting our electrical usage. Okay, remember 30 years ago we were doing this at the utility. It's 2017 now, and we're still trying to do that, still trying to lower our peaks. Okay, now on the rooftop units, there are other things we can do and manipulate it that are both energy kilowatt hour savings, demand savings, or can be both. And again, at the end of this presentation, I'll talk more about the dollars available and different ways of looking at it to maximize the amount a customer can get by operating his equipment in the appropriate programs. So this is a system where we miss the condenser of a rooftop unit. Now, why would anyone do that? Why are you going to throw water at my coil and all that stuff? Well, believe it or not, if you mist into the air, it drops the temperature of the air. Now, we know that. It's called a cooling tower, right? We've all seen that before. Okay? You've all run road races. Someone missed you with a spray going by. It feels pretty good. Well, here's a system on a demand response that when they get the call, and it's usually in the summertime, you turn this system on, and it drops the temperature 25 degrees as the condenser coil sees. Drops down the kW during the summer if it gets called upon in the demand response mode. Now that's important because when it's 100 degrees outside, it's 110 on the roof. And your rooftop units, once it gets over about 100, 105, some of them are consuming almost 50% more electricity because the compressor has to work harder than 30 degrees less. It's not a linear relationship. Hence, the whole reason we have demand response programs is because the vapor compression cycle that you all have in your refrigerators, your cars, your homes, the building we're sitting in right now. So if we can do something at the worst time of the summer, the worst time it's needed, hence all these programs, right? Most of them are geared towards the summertime, most of them. This could be done that measure. It could have also been done with a demand response measure from the energy efficiency folks, the utility. They could have incentivized these folks to turn this on a lot longer hours, and then the utility themselves enrolls that kilowatt hour or demand side management monies, and they sell it into the capacity market as a passive demand reduction. So they get credit for it. Not a lot of people know that. When you get incentives from your electric utilities, they get money from the ISOs as a passive demand reduction. Okay, and there's a lot of money sitting there, and you have to be aware of that, and we'll speak about that a little bit towards the end. Demand shifting. Okay, I think someone mentioned this again earlier. Hey, if you got a heavy demand and your rates say you got $36 per kW per month in the summer, what can we do? Well, I can just make ice during the nighttime and use it during the day. And that's what this does. So this could be a way of looking at the rates that you have and say, hey, you know something? My electrical rates are so bad. You all know what a ratchet rate is? Everybody know what that is? The repeat for 12 or last 11 months. You get in these different rates around the country, and this might be a great device in Albuquerque, but not so good in Idaho. So again, all these measures we're talking about in this presentation depend upon where you are. And that's a CalMac example of one, again, using ice. Natural gas. You might have rooftop units getting old and you want to replace them, and someone says, you realize the utility, the electric utility, may incentivize you to go put in gas units. Sound a little weird? Think it happens? Sure. There are many utilities across the country that are running out of capacity. Copper in the ground. Anyone from New York City here? New York City? Are they running out of some copper in some places around New York, right? And they're paying people 80% to switch from electric air conditioning to gas air conditioning, and the electric utility is paying you for it. Demand reduction. Demand reduction. Not saying you should do this, but it's be something you look into doing, right? Passive demand reduction. Rooftop units are sitting there. What are some of the other additional energy conservation measures we can do? As a retro vent, you put them on top of your rooftop units or your condenser coils. I'll quickly go through it because of time going through here. Here's another picture of it. And it pulls the air and sends up the condenser air far away from the rooftop unit. I'm going to go back to this slide. You've all seen those before, right? Anybody who ever walk up and put the hand over the fan? Okay, people would think, oh, the air must be blowing straight up. Goes that way, sideways. Right into what? What's this? This is the cooling, the intake for the air. So they're dumping very hot air right back into where they're trying to cool it off. It's just recycling it. Okay? So this is just a measure, and I throw this measure on there as another example of a demand reduction where the utility would incentivize this. They go take credit from the ISO from being a capacity market. You may not know that as a customer. You may just get a rebate from the utility or incentive or whatever the case may be. So the misting type stuff, the controls can be either or. This would be something which is fixed on there so it's working all the time, but it's still a demand reduction measure and an energy I should say kilowatt hour type savings measure. Go ahead.
Richie, that's just, go back 2 slides.
2?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Those are just like duct extensions?
They're duct extensions with vanes inside them at certain angles to calculate, to spin the air and get it away from the condenser.
Pretty dumb, stupid.
Very dumb and stupid. It's the same thing as the front of a jet engine. You know all the vanes you have sitting there to speed up? Yeah, it's no moving parts. We all know, but I'm just giving you examples, but yes. It's a cowl with blades turning inside as examples on the roof. Other enabling technology, so there's a bunch of things we can do on the rooftop unit. In addition, obviously going down and dirty with the catless, next rev type systems. And we had some speakers today from Honeywell and from Encyclo. These are the folks who provide you with some other enabling technologies. So if I can do all that stuff on the rooftop unit, maybe I can start to do it all together and have all of them at the same time do it, which would be fantastic, right? Because now I'm not just resetting the temperature. I got 6 or 7 other things I could do with that rooftop on demand. And again, there's many different providers. I just threw a couple of them here on the board. Some of them spoke a little bit early today. And again, it's definitely worth paying attention to. Now, the demand response providers, I then throw these names up on the board. These are the major ones, are involved with many programs around the world and paying customers to obviously reduce their energy. So when they get involved with folks like here, doing stuff like we talked about in those past slides, all of a sudden there's a plethora of information out there and a plethora of people wanting to provide these services to you. Hey, do this, do that. We heard a bunch of them earlier this afternoon. This is just a slide showing Ennox Center up in Boston, where they actually look at all the folks' meters and all over the country and all over different parts of the world. And when they get called upon for a demand response measure, whether it's Albuquerque today or in London tomorrow, it gets initiated out of this location. And this is why large corporations tend to use these folks here, the demand response providers. And again, there's money from demand response coming in. There's money from energy efficiency coming in. Some of the programs that are available out there, and again, there's 50 states, there's 100 different investor-owned utilities, there's many different ISOs and RTOs out there, and many different programs they have available to them. So I just threw a couple real quick ones up on the board. This is for Con Edison, some of the program examples that you have to do to get money. This happens to be a couple of slides from a company called C-Power, another demand response provider, and different programs. So all these ISOs allow for a bunch of programs, and the utilities within those ISOs deal out a bunch of programs, but they're all different in their own ways. And so every single building you have to look where the building is and then look at the opportunities that are going to be presented to you. Even one state can have 20 different demand response programs. But the goal of you, if you're a customer, and here's another one, in New York State, I believe, yeah. The goal of your customer is at least look at these. You may not be able to participate in a lot of them, but if there's 6 available and you can participate in 1 and 2, a voluntary program, why don't you go ahead and do it? Why don't you have that rooftop unit controller on there, do something besides just energy efficiency? Let's use it for demand response. It has the capability. It's built in. It's sitting there already. Enable it and use it. Okay? The incremental cost isn't that much, is it? It's already sitting there. But many of them are running right now and they're not even in programs. So which route should you go down for your rooftop units? Which one would you go down? Well, if you look at the far right, left, you got your rooftop units sitting here. And we talked a few of these examples of misting or venting with those devices and optimizing it, right? We talked about those Catalyst and Best Tech and NextRev, and they're going to go in there and throw some stuff to optimize this. So this is really going to be slick, using the least amount of kW and kilowatt hours you can possibly get away with. Then there's going to be technology like the folks at Honeywell that we heard a little bit earlier. It's going to enable us to go right there through them into the demand response programs. We may have to go through demand response providers with these systems. You might have to sign, we definitely sign deals with demand response providers. Some places you can go directly to the ISO, and then you got the electric utility over here. In some instances, they're the providers, but they're also the providers of money for the passive type demand reduction dollars. Okay, so putting this all together and thinking about the first thing I said was to save money, okay? There are over 60,000 electric rates across the country, 60,000 of them. So everyone in this room who has customers or works for you, your building's going to be all over the place. Always look at each place, look at the opportunity available for you. Most of your buildings are going to have a monthly kW peak demand on your bills. So that's one thing we pay attention to, right? Or we may have a contracted demand. We have to pay attention to that. We also, on our local distribution company bill, LDC bill, we may also have peak and off-peak charges. It involves time. So now we can manipulate that a little bit. Ratchet rates. I mentioned that a few minutes ago. Okay. You really don't like those rates, and if you can avoid that by avoiding going over a certain type of demand, time-related, all these things I'm talking about can be affected by the rooftop unit. So you're in one of the 15 deregulated states. You're buying power from a power marketer. Some of you do that. You're familiar with that. How do they give you a price for your building? They looked at your interval data. What does interval data mean? It's time, right? Everything's going back to time. Demand responses, day ahead, hours ahead. You're all familiar with these. Some folks turn machines off. The utility turns machines off at industrial facilities. Think about that. You can go day ahead, bonus ahead. So these gives you example programs. Passive demand reduction participation. Like we talked about, the utility is going to take your kilowatt hour savings and get credit in the demand response programs, the capacity programs available. So when you do energy efficiency, you're also helping in the demand response. And the last one up there, fuel switching where it makes sense. I mentioned a couple of examples of programs where the utilities, the electric utility will incentive you to switch over to a fuel. You may not have thought that would ever have been possible many years ago, but in that case it is. So one other thing I just wanted to mention up here on top of all these things, a facility manager has tools or options to try to reduce all of these things. And again, all comes back to time. Up in my neck of the woods, I live up in Boston, and it's ISO New England, a control area. And how they work, a little bit different than the ISOs down here or New York, PJM and other ones, is the worst hour of the year, and that worst hour being when it's the hottest out, and all the 6 New England states are consuming the most energy. There's going to be 1 hour out of 8, 7, 6 hours. That 1 hour is going to determine about 30% of your electrical cost for the entire year, generation cost. So if you paid $1, okay, you can save 30 cents by just having your equipment off for that 1 hour. That's 30%. So if it's $1 million, right, that's $300,000 off your bill for 1 hour. Wouldn't you want to know when that hour is? Wouldn't you want to kind of shut something off? Okay? And I just bring that as an example to you that timing is everything. And the money available through all the programs, we don't have time to talk about them right now this afternoon, available to everybody through the demand response, your billing, your utilities and stuff. Also, to bring your point back to here is make sure you pick the right one. Okay? You're allowed to double dip and sometimes triple dip in these programs. Okay? But that's why you may want to ask a professional to help you out, because all these tools are available to you. So as Ben Franklin once said, to love life, to do not squander time, for that is the stuff life is made of. Another famous guy, thou love saving money, then do not squander time, for that is the stuff demand reduction money is made of, okay? Thank you. Any questions? Great. Take care.